Okay, hi, it's Paul Green with another one of our regular Focus On panels. We normally have three, but one person couldn't make it today, so we're down to two. The idea is just to bring a panel of experts together every Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock and just look at a particular topic and discuss that. So if you're tuning into this, you've got any questions or comments, either live or on the replay, then please do put them on whatever platform you're on, and we should be able to bring those up on the screen and address any particular comments or questions that you have. So yes, without further ado, let me just sort of let the guys introduce themselves. So, Roger, do you want to let people know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Roger Eddowes, and I run a boutique accountancy practice called Eston Accounts and Tax based in Milton Keynes.
Fair enough. And Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy Tate. I run Bean Counters. We're based in Wellingborough, Northamptonshire. We're a small bookkeeping and accountancy practice.
Excellent. Okay, so it looks like Russell's joined us. I wonder whether he wants to come on the call. Maybe we'll message us in the chat, Russell, if you want to join us in this conversation. Otherwise, you can just sit in the background. So, yeah, the topic of conversation is, with a recession pending, maybe you might not think there is one, but I think we're long overdue one. What financial or other advice can you guys offer? So first of all, it might be worth just letting people know what the definition of a recession is, because they may not know. So does anybody want to have a stab at that?
Well, I can do.
Yep.
A simple definition is that it's a temporary, significant decline in economic activity, I suppose.
Yep.
And it normally lasts for a few months, and the effects of it obviously are people see their real net income go down, employment tends to go up, and shops suffer their sales and things like that. So it's a temporary period, and you hear about people talk about boom and bust.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like the bust cycle of that definition.
Yeah, I did Google it just to get the proper definition. So
okay.
No, you're absolutely right. So technically, what it is a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industry activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. So that's the thing that actually defines when you're in recession. If GDP is basically like the turnover of UK PLC in its simplest form, I guess, in my simple head. So yeah. So I guess the first question is, do you think we're heading for a recession? Wendy, what do you think?
Yes, I think we are. Hate to be doom and gloom on this, but I think prices are increasing. There are issues out there. There's issues around people getting employees, so that's going to reduce people's output as well, because the employee market has kind of disappeared a little bit since COVID, because people have decided, well, I don't need to earn as much money, I can take early retirement, and they've done things that they maybe wouldn't have done if they hadn't had 2 years sitting at home thinking, I like this. Is there any way I can actually change my work-life balance? So I think there are several issues out there that are contributing to this, but I think, yes, we are heading that way.
And what about you, Roger? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, we certainly, I think in the last quarter had a decline in the economy. So technically the next quarter, that's decline. We are technically in recession. I'd like to think that we're not trying to talk ourselves into recession. I think we're very good at that.
Yeah,
if we're not talking about the weather, we're talking about sort of doom and gloom and economy and things like that.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's interesting because when we started, when it was back in 2020, I always thought we were going to be in the roaring 20s, and now everyone's sort of in the mindset that it's inevitable we're going to have recession, and I suspect we will have a recession. And I think Wendy, sort of hit it on the nail a bit. I've noticed a lot of economic activity being held back just because we haven't got staff resource. Companies can't do the output that they want to. And then obviously we've got all the, perfect storm of prices going up and, wars happening in Ukraine and things like that, which have a knock-on effect on the whole world. So we are subject to sort of world factors that, we didn't anticipate 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's like, we survived Brexit, we went through a lockdown, then there's the war in the Ukraine. All of these are stretching worldwide economies on many levels, and we still seem to have sustained ourselves through the last couple of years without going technically into a recession. So do you think that, given that, particularly in the small business world, what we're all facing and have faced, do you think that businesses are going to be more resilient even if a recession does come our way? What do you think on that, Wendy?
I think they are. I think at the beginning of lockdown, we all sort of, I know I did, sat and put my head in my hands and cried a little bit, thinking, that's it, that's the end of my business. And I'm sure a lot of other people felt that way, but we've built up a huge resilience going through those lockdowns and having to make all the adjustments that businesses have had to make to keep going. And people have kept going. I think they've really had that, what do they call it, the Dunkirk spirit, and kept going. And I think that they're not going to now come into a recession and think, I'm giving up then. They're not going to go through everything they've been through in the last 2 years to give up now. So I think people have got a lot of resilience that they didn't even realise they had. They've had to dig deep, and they've done that.
That's put on the big boy pants, haven't they, Wendy?
Exactly. They certainly have.
So, Roger, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think certainly the last couple of years has cut out a lot of dead wood in the business community. So those businesses that were on the brink of collapse obviously did collapse, and so we are left with entrepreneurs who, as you say, got resilience and are determined to, make a go of it. The only slight thing that worries me is that a lot of businesses were supported with all the various COVID loans, furlough and all that sort of stuff. We're not going to have that this time round. So the question is, have businesses put aside for a rainy day, i.e. the supposedly, in theory, coming recession?
I guess in my experience, most don't. Most small businesses, a lot of hand to mouth, aren't they? Rather than having some rainy day sort of savings there, just in case the solids hit the air conditioning, for want of a better expression. So, before we came live, you said that you were in business during the last recession, which I think was around about 2008, Roger. So, do you recall anything from that? Did you, as a business, do anything different, or would you do anything differently now if a recession came your way?
Yeah, so that was a sort of a financial crisis, and it's interesting that it hits accountancy firms probably about 18 months afterwards. So actually, in the depths of recession, we were okay, but we felt it afterwards. But what I learned there, it was very much, as mentioned, save for a rainy day. Make sure you have got enough cash reserves there to, for example, pay your staff wages for the next 3 months, and things like that. And to be able to plan a bit more. So, again, we didn't necessarily have a skill shortage though back then. There were plenty of people on the market, and I think this recession is going to be slightly different in that they aren't going to have the employees on the market because unemployment's still relatively low and the job vacancies are sky high. So it's going to be a slightly different recession to the last one. Not quite sure how it's going to pan out, but I think it's going to be hindered that with a lack of staff resource, that is going to hinder people to recover from the recession.
Yeah. And do you guys have any predictions when you think a recession might hit us?
Well, I think it will hit over the summer if it's going to hit over the summer. If it's going to hit, I think it's going to hit sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I mean, the oil price and things like that, I think, and the sort of cost of living crisis and things like that, I think we might have a bit of it will be late summer, early autumn. I think people will sort of, it doesn't slow down over the summer, but a lot of people, get into holiday mode and take a break mode.
Yeah.
And then, but it's now that things are filtering through, the high oil price and things like that. I'm seeing that with you know, a lot of people. I mean, even personally, I know in lockdown, I mean, I've got an oil-fired boiler, and I got oil for 19p a litre in lockdown. Now it's £1.2.
Well, I hope you stocked up at 19p, Roger.
Well, I did, but I burnt it since then. But
yeah, that's a trouble. Yeah.
You know, those costs are now going to start filtering through into people's, you know, accounts, and they're going to be spending a lot more on their overheads.
Yeah.
And
so I guess given that, you know, that it's pending and it's potentially this year, you know, we don't know factually that's the case, but yeah, it sounds reasonable that could happen. I guess small businesses should start taking action now, shouldn't they, in terms of their finances and other aspects of their business. So what would you say are some of the things that business could possibly put in place now, Wendy? What sort of things would you suggest they start to do?
I start looking at your financials that you can actually have an impact on. So I've got 5 key points, and Roger's probably got a lot more than I have. Audit your direct debits. Are you paying for things you no longer use? Just basic stuff. Cut back on things that you're spending that you just let them go through and you're not actually using them. Do a cash flow forecast for at least 12 months ahead. Have you got any big bills coming up? And if you have, start to actually allow for that and put some contingencies aside. We all have them, and we all sort of say, oh dear, that was a surprise. I wasn't expecting that. Well, you actually were. Just kind of plan ahead a little bit more for those things and allow for, you know, are your IT systems going to need updating in a year's time? Start allowing for some of those big costs that you know are coming. Compare your costs. Are you getting the best deals on your utilities, your phones, and systems like that? So there's simple things that you can do to help cut your costs. Incentivize your staff. Now that might seem a back to front thing to do if you're going into a recession and you're stuck for money, but incentivize your staff, because if your staff are on board and they're incentivized, you might actually find productivity goes up. So you know, that is a good thing to do. And also save towards your tax bill. We all know we're going to have tax bills. We all know they're coming. And, you know, it isn't difficult with the help of your accountant to actually have some idea of what that is going to be, what it's going to look like month on month. You can actually start to plan ahead for that. Don't get to the time when your tax needs to be paid and the money isn't there.
Yeah.
You know, be prepared. Plan ahead, basically.
Anything you want to add to that, Roger? Any sort of advice that you're likely to give your clients over coming months to sort of batten down the hatches, I guess?
To keep calm,
but
be positive, but avoid making rash financial decisions out of fear of the future. So yes, you need to go back through, as Wendy quite rightly says, go through all your budgeting, make sure you're not paying for direct debit things by direct debit when you shouldn't be, and doing your cash flow forecast and things like that. But I would also think about some positive things that you can do. I mean, someone always told me, which is a member of the BizCom community, is don't neglect your networking. For example,
absolutely.
Use your network for support, and also to prepare yourself for when we come out of recession. So, because we will come out of recession, it's a fact. We will come out of it sometime. So will you be ready to meet the demand when we come out of recession? And we've got a classic example at the moment, haven't we, with the airlines at the moment. They cut right back in COVID, etc. Got no one to fly the planes or the air hostesses or hosts, etc. Now we haven't got them because they haven't planned for the fact that when everything was released, everyone wanted to go flying off to the sun. So when we come out of recession, are you ready for that pent-up demand and to take your business forward?
Yeah, I think that's a good, and thanks for waving the flag for networking, Roger. Checks in the post. But I think, that has been my experience, that people, start to cut back on their marketing budget. And yes, you've got to be shrewd with these things at the end of the day, but it is a mistake if you sort of put yourself in a box throughout recession and just sort of stick your head in the sand and hope for the best. So, you know, I've noticed that, as you probably have, during lockdown, with certain businesses that just sort of like disappeared off the networking scene and haven't reappeared anywhere. Yet some of the similar industries that were impacted more, like the hospitality and the leisure industry and travel, etc., photography comes to mind. You know, some of those guys still came networking, you know, even though they couldn't physically do their jobs or provide their service. Yeah, I think, you know, they are reaping the benefits now because they kept themselves in the eye of people that were, you know, going still marketing and still networking. So I think that it's a similar sort of thing, really. You know, whilst you might cut back a little bit, I think you should still be channeling your efforts to, you know, keep your brand and face out there, as you said, Roger, for when things do return, you know, so you're not forgotten. You can be easily forgotten if you just sort of stick yourself in a cupboard somewhere. So anything else, any other advice, not necessarily financial, just in general for people facing recession?
I definitely agree with what you guys have said regarding the networking, because it is such a shame that people did disappear. And you know, you've got to keep your name out there. The one thing that you think you should cut back on is the one thing that you shouldn't. And also, if you know, if your business is showing a downturn in the amount of work you're doing, you've got more time to do this. So use that time, use it to get your face out there, to do networking, to update your website, to do all the stuff that you can do in the background, that when we come out of this recession and you're really, really busy, that you won't have time for. So all those jobs that you thought that you keep putting off, if you're not busy in your business, work on your business, because, you know, when we come out of this recession, you'll be working in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody is tuning in now on the replay, then please do feel free to post any questions or any comments, and we'll bring you up on the screen if you do that. So I think you touched on it, Roger, and possibly you as well, Wendy. I think, and it's been the same during the last couple of years of the pandemic, I think a positive attitude, or at least a positive mindset, I think, even, you know, despite what's been going on, I think you still have to maintain that. What are your thoughts on that, Roger? Come to you first.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, particularly if you're a business owner, you've got to be leading the way with your staff and everything like that. And it's got to rub off on your network of suppliers and customers, etc. So, and one thing I was going to add is, you know, yeah, networking is extremely important, but you may have the opportunity actually to examine what you're actually doing in your business, and do you want to upgrade your skills? For example, you know, technology is moving so fast, you know, etc. And when you're really busy, it's hard to keep up with technology sometimes. Or should you be looking diversifying slightly into different areas? You know, you might still have the same product, but do you want to diversify into another area? So, you know, I look after a restaurant, and they've decided to go down the sci-fi route. So they've now got robots that deliver the food and things like that. And it's quirky little things like that, but then it's something different, and it will attract the business in. Because at the end of the day, even in a recession, the people out there who've got money to spend.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you need to channel your, you know, focus on that, be positive, and search where that money is and who's prepared to spend it.
I think you're absolutely right. I'll just bring up Steph's comment. There you go. So she's commented that continued marketing through a pandemic or recession is massively important. Roger proved that by doing more marketing and getting great engagements thanks to his efforts, whereas many accountants just shut up shop and left their clients in the wind. That certainly happened during lockdown, I know for sure, that accountants just disappeared, didn't they, and left their clients high and dry. So thanks for that comment, Steph. Just hide that. Wendy, what are your thoughts about sort of maintaining a positive mindset during?
It's key, isn't it? Because as Roger says, if you know, especially if you have staff, if you're all doom and gloom, how can you expect your staff to be positive? So you've got to be sort of really positive and give the impression to your staff that we're going to get through this and we're going to be fine as a business, because otherwise, if you're jittery, your staff will be jittery and you'll lose them. They'll go somewhere else where they think that there isn't going to be an issue. And then when we come out of the recession and you want to be full steam ahead, your staff aren't there anymore. So you've got to stay so positive, and for your clients as well. You know, as Roger and I, we both have clients that are going to be coming to us that will be feeling doom and gloom themselves. They don't need us adding to that. They need us to be positive and saying, you know, we can do this. You can do this. You've done it before. You can do it again. They don't need us to be doom and gloom, do they?
No, I think you're right. I think building on what you said, Roger, about people are still spending money during a recession, obviously less, because that's why I guess you're in a recession, but people will still be spending it. And I think that's where, you know, targeting and focus comes in terms of who your sort of ideal target market is, because you're very clear on that. And they are still buying, albeit in a recession. Then it's just about you being a bit more targeted in terms of finding out where those clients are, which might mean you have to have a slightly bigger reach and sort of go outside of where you normally would market, because the market is potentially smaller. But I think focusing and targeting is important. What are your thoughts on that, Roger?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously there's a lot of society who won't have the cash to be able to spend, and you know, we have to recognise and look after those people as a country. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make is, I think particularly with COVID, etc., there are a lot of people actually who saved an awful lot because they weren't going on holidays abroad and things like that, and there's still a bit of a pent up demand there. So we as a business community need to be able to give the opportunity to those people to be able to spend their money. And that's what's going to get us out of the recession.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back to the networking thing. I used to be part of a business network many years ago when I first started. And it was basically business consultants working together, coming together on a regular meeting. And I just used to call them sort of like the BMW sessions, because they were just bitching, moaning and whinging sessions. That's all they were. And, you know, I'd drive back from the meeting sort of like feeling depressed. So I think, you know, you need to surround yourself with people that are going to have a positive outlook. And if you are struggling, you know, I'm sure we'll put out a reaching hand or give you that ear to bend or shoulder to cry on, whatever you need at the time. So I think, yeah, it is important to sort of sustain your networks, whatever they look like, and just sort of stay connected and keep communicating. And, you know, everybody will get through it together, hopefully.
Yeah, and you shouldn't forget the network on your doorstep. You know, I'm fortunate enough to employ a great team of accountants of various stages in their career here. But, you know, the 10 other brains there, 10 other mindsets, 10 loads of more ideas. We need to be bringing them all together and using, you know, listening to their ideas, because they want job security and they want to see the business grow. So as business owners, we should be listening all the time. And but important that we've got to harness that. And we, as you say, we can't be BMWs.
Yeah. So when I come to you for the next sort of question, I'm just making up as I go along, but I think we're winging it quite well. So
Okay.
do you think there's a tendency for businesses to start putting their prices down when it comes to recession? And what are your thoughts on that?
Some do. I think that's a mistake, because your overheads are going up. You're squeezing your own margins, and are you squeezing your margin to the point that your company won't survive? At the end of the day, your company has to survive. I get that people give special offers or might do an introductory offer, but not to actually wholesale put your prices down. I think that's the wrong thing to do. It sends the wrong message as well. It sends a message of desperation, and it also sends another message. Were they charging me too much in the first place if they can suddenly drop those prices? So I think it sends a completely wrong message to do that. An introductory offer, maybe an offer, but not to wholesale put your prices down. No, I don't agree with that.
What about you, Roger? Do you think there's a tendency for business to react that way?
There obviously will be some, but it's short-sighted, as Wendy is alluding to. I mean, I would be thinking to myself, what value are you giving your customers? Some will still buy off you at the same price, but if you're providing that great service or great product, you'll still be able to sell it.
Yeah.
So it may be, you have to put bells and whistles and balloons up or whatever on the fancy car that you're trying to sell to make it happen, but I wouldn't reduce the price.
No.
So
Yes.
it will only damage your brand in the long term.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It is a mistake generally discounting, in my view, as unless Wendy says, unless you're doing a special introductory offer or something like that. I think discounting can cost a business quite a lot on their bottom line without them really realizing the impact it has. And the opposite effect, by putting their prices up, is probably going to have less of an impact on their business. And my experience, and I'm going off track a little bit, my experience is most businesses undercharge for what the product and services that they're, particularly when they're new, because I think they get a little bit keen and they're not as confident as they are as they might be as their business develops, to charge what they're really worth. But I think whether you're in a recession, whatever's going on, I think you've got to continue to still get the right price for the value you're offering. I think Steffi's sort of pretty much got it right. Don't discount, add value.
That is the perfect thing. When we went into lockdown, I started posting things that would help people, whether they were my clients or not, just information that would help people, add value, and people remember you. So yeah, add value. Don't reduce your prices. I agree with you, Steffi. Absolutely.
And it could be simple things. We were just talking a few minutes before we came on air, didn't we, Paul? I went to have my car tyres fitted at 8 o'clock. What really was important to me was that I had the car back on the road within an hour. And it wasn't for 2.5 hours before it was back on the road. That was what was important to me. And that was a poor buying experience that I've had. So I will remember that now. So you've got to, when you're in business, you've got to deliver, it's not just price, it's all the other things.
Yeah.
Deliver on time and provide that customer service. Yeah. And that's what will make you stand out.
Yeah. So if people start getting into difficulty financially, possibly with not being able to pay HMRC or not enough month left at the end of the money, or whichever way the expression ran, what should they be looking to do? I know you've touched on some tips earlier, but if for example they can't pay HMRC, what should they do?
Contact HMRC straight away. Do not bury your head in the sand. That's what you should not do. HMRC, they're not ogres. If you bury your head in the sand and don't get in touch with them, then they're going to come after you big time. If you actually go to them and say, look, I'm having this difficulty, can we arrange a payment plan? They will happily sit down and work out what you can afford and help you. They don't want businesses to go bust. They're not getting their taxes if that happens. So don't bury your head in the sand. Contact your creditors and work out payment plans with them and be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And the revenue are quite open to business payment plans, particularly for liabilities under 30,000. So, they're only too grateful for that communication.
Yeah.
And the fact that they know that they will get their money at the end of the day. Okay, it might just take a bit longer. They will obviously charge a bit of interest for that. So you've got to keep an eye on that. But I think what you can also do is, yes, you can bring up the revenue, but it may be that you need to just look at all of your financing in your business. Can you consolidate various loans? I quite often see people who've got, a nationwide loan here and a NatWest loan there, etc.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you consolidate them and maybe even get a lower interest rate, that will help.
Yeah.
So, and it might actually be cheaper to go and borrow the money rather than pay the revenues rate of interest. So, and what people also remember are that a lot of now finance companies out there that will finance your VAT bill for you and things like that. So it's a bit like HP on your car. You go and say, well, this is my VAT return. This is how I've got to pay. Can I spread it over the next 6 months, whatever? And companies will do that. So it's having a look at the whole of your financing and your stage payments and see what you can afford, etc. as well.
Yeah, I think in any situation, if you can't afford to pay your bills or your clients are struggling to pay their bills, then I think you've got to be in communication, because it's better to arrange like a stage payment process rather than not get any money at the end of the day. And I think too easily sometimes people can just sort of like stick a debt collector on someone that owes you money. Yes, that's an option, that's fine, but I think communication first of all, and seeing if you can work out a payment plan, possibly with a little bit of interest on top of it, because they're not paying when the money was due. But I think it's worth looking at that just generally. I think sometimes people's debtor days and creditor days are too high or too low, depending on what metric you're looking at. So it's always worth having those conversations, isn't it, with suppliers and your clients, just making sure that they're able to pay and you're able to pay at the end of the day, because otherwise it has a knock-on effect, doesn't it? If you're not getting revenue into your business, that makes it harder for you to pay your bills at the end of the day.
But
and the other thing, sorry, Roger, the other thing that I have seen with the clients of mine was they had the terms that they had with their creditors were lower than the terms that they were giving their customers. So they were having to pay for the goods before they were getting the money from their customers. So look at your debt, your debtor and creditor days, and make sure your creditor debt you're not getting. You're giving your customers more favourable terms than you're getting, which will impact your cash flow.
Yeah, Roger, you were going to say something.
I was just going back to taxes, and small businesses and VAT, for example. I do come across particularly some new clients who, and I don't know if people realise, but there are basically two ways you account for your VAT. One's on the invoice basis. In other words, every time you raise a sales invoice, you have to pay the VAT element over to the revenue. Or there's the cash basis, where you pay the VAT over to the revenue when you get the cash in from your customer.
That's a very good point.
So it may be that you've got running a small business VAT registered and you're busy paying VAT over, which you haven't actually collected from your customer yet.
Mm-hmm.
So look about what VAT scheme you're on, and it may be that there are other schemes out there called like the flat rate scheme, which is a fixed percentage of VAT. It's making sure that you've got the basics right, because you may be actually paying VAT over too early.
That's a very good point.
Which will hinder your cash flow. Yeah,
and am I right in thinking that you can change between the ways you pay VAT? I know there's limitations. You can't keep chopping and changing, but can you change to a flat rate and then change back to a standard rate, or how does that work?
You have to write to the you can go on a flat rate scheme and you can come off it, but you have to write to the revenue to seek their approval, basically.
Okay.
To come off a flat rate scheme.
Yeah.
But again, there are various thresholds. So as your business goes, say, over a quarter of 230,000, I think it is, you can't be on that flat rate scheme anymore. You've got to come off it and things like that. So it's aimed at the smaller businesses.
Yeah.
But obviously, small businesses are the backbone of Britain. So it's important that a small business owner has got the basics in place, the right VAT schemes. And accountant will help them assess that.
I've just been speaking to one of my clients, and we've moved them to a monthly VAT return.
Yeah.
Because they're a construction company, and until it comes to the point where they're selling the properties, they're having a VAT reclaim most VAT returns. So, why not change to a monthly VAT return and get those reclaims back monthly instead of having to wait for the end of the quarter?
Yeah, absolutely, because you would have paid the supplier the VAT element.
So, exactly. So we've just moved those onto them, and they're quite happy. They're getting their money back from HMRC more regularly now. So that's another thing. To quarterly VAT returns suit your business, or would you be better suited to having a monthly one?
Yeah. So our studio guest in the background, Russell, has asked a question. Are there any self-help tools available for debt collection rather than employing a debt collector? Do you guys have any insights on that?
Yes, you can. There's an online service that you pay a flat rate to, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I can find out for you, Russell, and I will let you know. You pay a set fee, and you give them certain details, and they will go and do that chasing for you.
Are you aware of any tools, Roger?
Well, what Wendy said is probably the way to go. I mean, you know, organisations like the FSB and things like that have all got the various template letters that you can use.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And make sure that you do your, because before you can really go and chase a debt, you've got to make sure you've got your reminder letters in, first letters, warning letters, second letters, 7 days before legal action and all this sort of stuff. So you've got to make sure you've had those communications in place before you go to the next stage of, sending the boys around with baseball bats.
Exactly. And I know Xero, and I know I bang the drum for Xero, but I'm sure other software does it as well. You can actually set automatic invoice reminders within the software. So I know Xero does. I'm sure the others have a way of doing this as well. So you don't even have to be logged into the software for those invoice reminders to go out. And you can change the wording so it's in your voice, so it can be more gentle to start with and become more forceful as time goes on. Hopefully it won't ever get to that stage. But Xero did do a big survey on this, and they found that people that were using invoice reminders, even if it was a polite reminder to say your invoice is due for payment tomorrow, just remind people beforehand sometimes, and it reduced the debtor days and improved people's cash flow. Don't be afraid to say, you owe me some money, can I have it please?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of that. I think a lot of small businesses leave it too late in general to raise invoices, chase invoices, and also their terms and conditions in terms of payment terms, number of days is sometimes silly, because people just think it has to be 30 days. And it's like, why? It's just one of those myths that sort of seems to have permeated through small business that, that's what it should be. But yeah, it's a much easier conversation, even if an invoice is not due till next Friday. Is just to throw an email in or just pick up. Of course, I'll just check. Is everything okay with the invoice? We've got it as due, this Friday or next Friday, whatever I said. That's a nicer conversation and less frustrating than not having done that, and then you're chasing your tail all the while. And I think you just build that into your process, into your systems. It sounds like Xero can automate some of that as well. That it just makes it so much easier, to get your money in. Really is. So is there anything else before we wrap up for today that you'd like to throw out there for anybody that's listening live or listening on a replay?
Keep calm and carry on.
Keep calm and carry on. I'm going to make a poster out of that on campus.
Yeah.
Anything for you, Wendy?
Just keep a positive mindset, and don't feel that you're alone. If there's a recession, everybody's going through a recession, not just you. And keep networking, keep talking to people, and stay positive.
Yeah. I mean, help is out there. Don't bury your head in the sand. If you are stuck or you are getting to financial difficulties, pick up the phone and ring either of these guys, or ring your accountant, or just reach out. Don't try and get through it without any support. It's out there, and all these things, I guess, I'm sure you guys would agree, whatever situation the business is in, they are manageable to an extent, as long as you guys are involved early enough, rather than when it's when HMRC are knocking on the door or the bailiffs are knocking on the door. So start those conversations earlier at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So thanks to you guys for joining me today. Next week we're going to have a sales and marketing theme. So I have some panelists there, and we're going to be discussing, is branding important for small business? So hopefully you can tune into that. Thanks for anybody that's listening on now or on replay. We'll end the broadcast there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.